Hello, this is Alex from cables.gl. I'd like to show you an operator called map_range_array. And if the name is familiar to you, that's true because there is an operator called map_range, which we have a tutorial on, and I'll link it below. And that one works with a single value. But map_range_array works with all the values in your array. And you can use it to do some really cool stuff. And I got an example here where I am using map_range_array to change the rotation of the meshes that are in this mesh instancer. And what I'm going to do is go over to a simpler example, and then we'll come back to this stuff, and I'll show you how to use it for things like this. Okay, so in this simple setup, I have a main loop with a transform to align my text mesh. And the text mesh is displaying a value I'm taking out of this array from numbers. And what it's doing is creating an array. And I'm going to show you what happens when I change this value at index 0. And we're going, we're getting the readout that we're inputting into this array from numbers. And array get number is getting this number from index 0. So nothing special here. But I've placed map_range_array here. And if we look over at the parameters, we'll see that it has an old minimum and an old maximum. And that is the range of your input value. So for example, right here, I'm going to go from 0 to 1. Okay. And then here we have the new minimum and new maximum. And what it's going to do is it's going to take something like the old minimum 0 and then change it to -1, while the old maximum 1 will be new maximum of 1. So very simple. And you see something changed already. And we'll go to 0. I'll just type it in. All right. So now we have -1 when we're putting in the value 0 into this array. And this is pretty cool because you can use it for stuff like this, where I am taking the rotations and assigning them a value of 0 to 1 with this array 1x here. So you see my value for the rotation on the x-axis is going to be 0 to 1. And then with the map_range_array, I have the old minimum and the old maximum set to 0 and 1, and the new minimum and new maximum is 0 to 180. So it's going to take those numbers and then rotate or change those values to something like a rotation angle, which is 180, which is what Mesh Instancer likes. So if we go back here and put in 1, then it doesn't really look like anything is happening, right? So that's as if we're just putting in our array with 0 to 1 into the rotations, and it doesn't look very interesting at all. But if we put in this map_range_array and we change this 0 to 1 to something to like 0 to 360, then we're now getting very cool, very light on the CPU and even GPU shapes. And you can animate this stuff, of course. So if I go into different ranges, you'll see that it's animating live, which is also pretty interesting. And another trick I want to show you is, for example, I'll go back to this first example where I had my initial design was 0 to 360. And I was thinking, okay, but what would it look like if I'm going into extremes, right? I'll do this rotation twice or 3 times. And what you can do is just type in like a math function. So I'm going to type in asterisk into this new maximum and then put in the number, let's say 6. And then you'll see immediately that there is an equals 2160. So you can use the parameter input fields with little math operations. So it's pretty handy for stuff like rotating things or adjusting values with increments or maybe like, yeah, just dividing or multiplying things. So yeah, and then now I'm getting, instead of 0 to 1, I'm getting to 0 to 2160. So it's rotating on the, let's see, what axis is this? On the z-axis, we're rotating 6 times. So you get this really funky kind of mathematical shape. And what can we do? Let's just make one of these mesh instance thingies from scratch. So I'm gonna delete this one. I'm gonna leave the map range, and I'm gonna delete these two. Uh, what do we need? We need the mesh instancer. So mesh instancer, and I'm gonna give it a mesh like a cube, and then plug this into the main loop as well. And I'm going to use a circle points because this was one of the first things I wanted to do with mesh instancing, and I wasn't really sure how to do it until I found this map range array. So we're going to do circle points, point circle, okay? And then we'll make these a lot smaller. So 0 to 1, 0 to 1, 0.1. All right, and we'll remove the rendering of this cube from the center. Okay, so what I want to do, for example, is have long cube-like shapes around the center of the circle and kind of like shooting outward. Okay, so I guess maybe we'll do height maybe. And you see what happens is, since there's no rotation applied to the mesh instancer, it's just putting these elongated cubes around the circle, but they're all kind of pointing one direction. Okay, I'll give it a material as well. Let's just do a basic and go with something like red. Okay. So how do I make all of these shapes point from the center outward? Let's create a new array. I'm going to go for array. And what do I need in the array? The array needs to be the same length, or it would have to have the same amount of 3D rotation points as the number of points in our circle. So we have 40 points. So we have 40 elongated cubes. And I'm going to need to plug in this 40 points into the array length. Okay, so now we have an array of 40, and I'm going to set it to 0 to 1. All right, so now we have, for example, the X rotation. But mesh instancer needs either Euler or quaternion rotations, right? So Euler is XYZ, so we're going to go with that one. And what I'm going to do here is change this array to an array of 3 rotation points. So I'm going to use this one called array 1 to X. It's a really handy operator, actually. Should do another tutorial on it. So now I'm going to select the format, which is ABC. So it's going to be an array 3 that we need for this mesh instance rotations. And I'm going to set them all to 0. And I'm going to plug it into the rotations. And array 1x is taking this array of 40 and changing it to an array 3 with a length of 40. And we're getting 120 rotation values for each of these 40 cubes. All right, so what do we do now? Let's see what rotation we need. I think it's Z, right? So I'm going to use this as the input, and these I'll leave at 0 for ABC. So X and Y rotation will be 0, and then the Z rotation will be whatever I'm inputting. And right now I'm inputting 0 to 1. And this is where map range finally comes into play. We're going to plop it in here. And I'm going to leave this old minimum to 0, old maximum to 1. and then change the new minimum to 0 and then 360. And I might have gotten the size here wrong, but there we go. So now we see that the cubes are all pointing from the inside outward. So they're all rotating nicely. And if I change the number of segments to maybe like 6, it doesn't really matter. And they're still rotating correctly because this wonderful map range array is doing its magic. So I'll publish these other patches for you and link them in the video so you can explore what's going on. But yeah, I hope this is very useful. And see you soon. Bye.